The schedule importer is a handy feature in Logbook Pro where airline pilots can process their trip data at nc-software.com/schedule or within the in-app schedule importer and automatically preload your future flying activity or even past flying activity. So let's go ahead and look at these schedule importer settings. You can set the default aircraft type, which is a required setting. So let's just go ahead and choose one. Before you can use the schedule importer, you do need to select a default aircraft type. Now, if your trip data has the aircraft type that we can process and capture, then we'll use that. But if it cannot be determined, then we need a default to fall back on. The aircraft ident is completely optional. Some people like to go ahead and just enter, if you're tracking N numbers, you can go ahead and enter N, and then that'll be automatically loaded for you for the flight, and then you can just enter 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever the actual tail or fin number is. The other options in the schedule importer settings is whether or not to use recent recall. So when you're importing trip data, you can recall your last entered aircraft and tail number or whatnot. If you do not use this, then it will fall back to the default, or if it's not available, then it will fall back to the default. You can determine whether or not your imported trip data triggers autofill. Autofill is configured in Options Autofill in Logbook Pro Desktop. So for the specific aircraft type, you can determine that when you get your duration of your imported trip data, whether or not you want to automatically preload other fields, whether it's PIC, cross-country, etc., so you can automatically have those fields populated. If you don't want to have the duration entered for you, typically for future flying, you don't know that duration, so you can go ahead and leave it blank, and it will just pre-populate your UI times. But if you want to go ahead and get an estimate of how many hours you're flying in the future and use some of Logbook Pro stats, then you can go ahead and have the duration filled in, and then you can update it. If you have calendar integration enabled in the settings calendar area, then this option will be available to you as to whether or not you want your scheduled imported trips to go on the calendar. And then whether or not you want to pull down deadhead when you have by leg for the collation. Now you can choose collation either by leg or by day. In other words, when the schedule importer processes your trip, we can enter it as one flight per leg, or we can take all the legs for a day and enter that into a single flight log entry for you. The bottom section is the field map. So if you create custom text fields in Logbook Pro Desktop, go to Options, Custom for your custom fields area, then go to the Text tab for the text field type. You can capture crew, hotel, trip number, etc. into custom text fields. So if you create custom text fields, those will be available as targets. Otherwise, you cannot capture them. In other words, do nothing, or you can go ahead and put that data into the remarks. Now, for the columns that you have append in remarks, you can also take control of what order that information goes into the remarks. So if you always want it to be trip number, flight number, crew, and hotel, then you can come in here and you can specify this template using these little codes, FNO for flight number, TNO for trip number, etc. So if you don't even want, if you had appended remarks on all of these, if you took out duty on, duty off, and duty time, then you would only get these 4 items entered into the remarks. So by setting appended remarks, you can choose the format of how that data goes into your remarks. So take a look at the settings schedule importer area of the app for those that for the airline pilots that use the schedule importer functionality, and you have full control here to really help customize your importing experience.